Hello Indy 500 fans! Welcome to FormulaPunRacer, the channel where car racing and comedy collide. And at long last, with today being November 25th, 2023, I hope you all had a wonderful happy Thanksgiving. But now, I am here today to give you my review on the long-awaited 107th running of the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500, which took place back on May 28th, 2023. And just like every year it has done so far, the Indy 500 was filled with spectacular surprises, records being broken, and history being made, with one driver out of 33 starters drinking cold milk at the end of 200 laps. And before the race even started, there was already some big stir-ups going about, and it all started with Graham Rahal of Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan and his teammates Jack Harvey and Christian Lundgaard struggling to get into the field in qualifying. And when all was said and done, Jack Harvey ended up bumping out Graham Rahal, the only driver who failed to make the cut. But interestingly enough, the day after qualifying, Stefan Wilson of Dry and Reinbold Racing was in a practice crash with Catherine Legge in the turn 1 wall. He was out with a fractured vertebra, and ironically enough, it would be Graham Rahal to fill in the seat for Stefan Wilson. So pretty fitting, even though he would have to start dead last. This also would be the final race for 2013 Indy 500 winner Tony Kanaan, who would retire at the end of this race, win or lose. And just like Rick Mears at Team Penske and Dario Franchitti at Chip Ganassi Racing, Tony Kanaan is now in an advisory role with Arrow McLaren Racing. Wonderful results for 3 former Indy 500 winners going into still in business with racing, albeit as a team advisor. Unfortunately, as for Graham Rahal, despite managing to be a sub for Stefan Wilson into the race, it was not a really great start for him. In fact, just as the engines were started up, things went sour right before the green flag even started, and here's how. Embarrassingly, as the cars began to roll away to warm up their tires for the start of the race, Graham's car refused to turn over. His pit crew had to push his car off the track into the pits to fight a battery problem. This would be painfully costly for Graham, as he lost 2 laps before the problem would be fixed, and back on the track he'd go. The other 32 cars started the race all normally when the green flag flew. Alex Palou of Spain led the field from his pole position, with Rinus VeeKay and Felix Rosenqvist close behind. After Palou led the first lap, Graham Rahal was finally able to join the race, but unfortunately already being 2 laps down meant that any hope of getting back on the lead lap, let alone winning the race, had evaporated. Up until lap 25, Palou and VeeKay had their share of swapping the lead. Unfortunately by then, Alex's Chip Ganassi teammate Scott Dixon's PNC Bank Honda began to have handling problems when the left rear tire began developing vibrations that negatively impacted the car's handling. Scott was forced to pit on lap 27 to address the situation 5 laps earlier than planned. Before that, he was as high as 4th place. But since this pit stop was under green flag conditions, his chances of winning in the PNC Bank car bounced like a check as he dropped down the leaderboard. Yeah, I know, it's pretty unfortunate that Scott Dixon's car got all shaky up like that. Curse those Firestone tires for shaking up Scott Dixon's chances of winning. Quite an earthquake that sends his chances of winning to collapse. Okay, me shaking like that was definitely over the top. But I couldn't help a better way to transition this idea, because I tell you, a vibrating tire at over 230 miles per hour around the Indianapolis 500 is not a pleasant sensation. It'll definitely leave a driver definitely shaken, not stirred. And no doubt Scott couldn't handle it anymore, and it was definitely feeling into his brain for that matter. So keep that up. Things could have gotten worse. His car could have lost control and hit the wall, or who knows what else. So Scott did the right call, along with his managing director, Mike Hull of Chip Ganassi Racing, to come into the pits to replace the tires. And despite the fact that he may not have led a lap this entire race, amazingly, Scott Dixon managed to come back to finish 6th on the lead lap, so pretty impressive for the Iceman from New Zealand. Benjamin Peterson and Helio Castroneves would be the first drivers in the race to make their pit stops on lap 29. VK and Pagenaud would follow suit on the next lap. As the drivers took this window of opportunity to refuel, change tires, and make front and or rear wing adjustments, it would go unfortunately wrong for Catherine Legge of England on lap 35. As she left her pit box, she lost control and her left front tire gently hit the inside pit wall. She was able to continue on for a few more laps, but unfortunately the tap to the wall was too damaging for the steering and suspension, and Catherine Legge was the first retirement of the race.
Game over, yeah!
Like I said, women and machinery do not mix.
What? I'm insulted by that! Sorry everyone about Colonel Archibald Gracie's opinion about women and machinery, because I say, for sure, in my personal opinion, women and machinery definitely do mix. And Danica Patrick is a prime example of that, as she is the best female finisher in the Indy 500's history, with a third place in 2009. Not only that, but French rally driver Michel Mouton won 4 World Rally events in 1982 and finished second in the FIA World Rally Championship. Now that's quite an accomplishment, and more so, Queen Elizabeth II in her younger years, she used to be a mechanic fixing Jeeps as well, so women and machinery don't mix my eye. Well, anyway, forgive Colonel Archibald Gracie for being so, ignorant about women. I think women, I'd like to see more of them racing in the Indy 500 someday. Oh, and hopefully maybe someday 2 positions better than Danica could finish. But let's get back to the race at hand, shall we? Pagenaud was still leading with VK on his tail until lap 62 when the Spaniard peeled off to take his second pit stop. VK followed suit a few laps later, relinquishing the lead to Arrow McLaren driver Felix Rosenqvist of Sweden, with his Mexican teammate Pato O'Ward behind him. The 2 teammates would swap the lead up until lap 92, which is when the first caution period would occur. Going through turn 1, Graham Rahal and rookie driver Stingray Robb of Idaho were side by side. Unfortunately, Stingray's car was not in the groove or the grippier part of the turn, and this is what caused Stingray to be robbed of any hopes of continuing, let alone winning the race. Stingray was okay after hitting the wall, but was clearly upset at Graham for turning his race into a mashed potato. Almost the entire field would take the opportunity on lap 95 during the yellow flag to pit. Unfortunately, Rinus VK lost control coming out of his pit box and crashed into Pagenaud's car. Pagenaud had to be rolled back to his pit to replace his broken front wing. Fortunately, Pagenaud was able to continue on, but his chances of retaking the lead, let alone winning the Indy 500, were dashed. VK was issued a drive-through penalty when the race restarted on lap 100. Callum Ilott was leading when the race restarted, but was instantly passed by Felix Rosenqvist and Pato O'Ward for them to continue their lead swapping for the next 38 laps. By lap 138, Marcus Ericsson took over the lead from Felix. The following lap, Joseph Newgarden of Team Penske got around Rosenqvist for second. Apparently at this point, Felix's charge was not as Rosen-quick as it was earlier in the race. On lap 133, it all went badly wrong for 2 of the Andretti Autosport entries. As Colton Herta took his pit stop, the right front tire changer tried to tell Colton to hold, but a slight miscommunication made Colton take off, unaware that his own teammate Romain Grosjean was coming in, and they unfortunately tangled. The damage was minimal to both cars, but it cost them both a lot of time before they could continue on. To add insult to injury, on lap 150, Romain Grosjean lost control in the same turn as last year and hit the wall, bringing out the caution flag. Romain was not hurt, except his feelings. With 2 Andretti Autosport entries having a bad day, you're probably wondering right away, what about Marco Andretti to hopefully break the Andretti family curse at Indy? Would that happen? I hate to break it to you, but unfortunately, he would not either. He finished 17th, the last car on the lead lap, another headache for all of those who were hoping for the Andretti family curse to snap at the Indy 500.
Oh, I have a headache! Why don't I ever get to win? It's just not fair!
The race resumed on lap 156 with Joseph Newgarden and Marcus Ericsson swapping the lead for the next 4 laps. By then, surprisingly, Santino Ferrucci of AJ Foyt Racing took the lead. With 31 laps to go, Ferrucci took his final pit stop, relinquishing the lead to Marcus Ericsson. A few laps later, Marcus and the other leaders took their pit stops, which put Patricia Ward's Arrow McLaren Chevy in the lead. The Mexican held the lead until lap 180 to make his final pit stop. When the leaders had completed their pit cycles, it was Ryan Hunter-Reay of Dreyer and Reinbold Racing who was out in front. Unfortunately, with 16 laps to go, Felix Rosenqvist brushed the wall between turns 1 and 2 and spun around, collecting Andretti Autosport driver Kyle Kirkwood in the process. The contact between the two cars broke off Kirkwood's left rear tire and caused it to go flying over the catch fence in turn 2. At the same time, Kirkwood hit the wall and his car went sliding down the backstretch upside down. Fortunately, Kirk was not hurt. This crash brought the race to a red flag stop with 14 laps to go. And thank goodness, Kyle was okay after that thanks to the Red Bull engineered aero screen and the roll cage above his head that kept him perfectly safe. But once again, as you see here from the replay of how that tire went flying over the grandstands, it was just good fortune that it cleared the grandstands perfectly, because if not, this would have been serious and controversial in many different ways. So nobody got hurt in this accident, as you see here.
Hey, where'd that wheel come from?
Like I just said, Buddy Hackett, that wheel came from the left rear of Kyle Kirkwood's car, and where outside the track did it land? It ended up hitting a spectator's personal car, a white Chevrolet Cruze, owned by a Robin Matthews. But by good fortune, out of consideration, she was compensated with a personal tour of the track shortly after the race, and 4 days afterwards was presented by the IMS with a brand new car to call her own. So that was pretty thoughtful of the IndyCar series to do this for a spectator after what she's been through, especially since the insurance people would probably never believe what happened there. And I think this is something that Formula One would never do for anyone, and why I like IndyCar over F1. And if you ask me, pretty foolish for manufacturers like Ferrari, Aston Martin, Jaguar, BMW, Volvo, and so on and so forth to not try their hand in IndyCars because they're missing out big time. As well as people like Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and so on and so forth, Leclerc as well, to not try their hand at the Indy 500. I think they're being very foolish, and like I said before about the prancing horse not going in IndyCars, they are a prancing chicken! When the engines were restarted and the cars started to warm up their tires for the next restart, the top three drivers of Ryan Hunter-Reay at Dreyer and Reinbold Racing and Junko's Hollinger teammates Callum Ilott and Augustine Canapino pitted under the caution to change tires and refuel. This would give the lead back to Pato O'Ward. Marcus Ericsson would inherit second and Joseph Newgarden third. The green flag resumed the race with 8 laps to go, and already going into turn 1, Newgarden and Ericsson slingshot their way around O'Ward. In that same lap, O'Ward aggressively tried to retake second place back from Ericsson going into turn 3. Unfortunately, the Mexican spun out and hit the North Chute wall. As a result of O'Ward spinning, this caused a chain reaction behind him as drivers began to slow down. Scott McLaughlin accidentally hit Simon Pagenaud from behind, forcing the AutoNation Honda into the wall, and Scott's yellow Pennzoil Chevy suffered damage to its nose. Augustine Canapino swerved into the infield grass to avoid McLaughlin, lost control and hit the wall himself. From that point on, his car was still moving, but like a train on a rail, Augustine could not stop nor steer his car and ran into the back of O'Ward's already stricken car, causing him to be airborne for a moment. Nobody was hurt, but this brought the race under the red flag for the second time. Oof, considering how hard an airborne hit both O'Ward and Canapino took there in the North Chute, just thinking about it makes my back sore. Nevertheless, it is unfortunate that while these drivers were out of the race, nobody was hurt when the race was brought to a stop to clear out the debris in the hopes that this race would finish under green. But all the same, as for Patricio Ward and all his Mexican fans, this would be a race he'd like to forget, and definitely not an event he would like to taco about. Just as the green flag restarted the race with 4 laps from the finish, Marcus Ericsson snatched the lead away from Joseph Newgarden, but shortly after doing that, 5 cars collided on the front straightaway behind them. It involved Graham Rahal, Ed Carpenter, Christian Lundgaard, Benjamin Peterson, and Marco Andretti to complete the Andretti Autosport's day of misery. As a result, the race was red flagged for the third time in the hopes of getting the Indy 500 to finish under green. In my opinion, this was controversially embarrassing and frustrating.
Oh, come on!
Wow. 3 times the race has stopped in 1 year. For the first time since 1973, when the Indy 500 last had 3 red flags in the span of 1 race. Only this time, in contrast to 73, there was no rain playing a factor in why the race was stopped. But at the same time, they say yellow flags breed yellow flags. Well, apparently reds breed reds as well in this case. Who would have thought? In the span of so close to each other. But the wait for the track to clear up all this mess to get the race going. Oh boy, it sure was tiring to wait that long. And the fact that the race was stopped with only 2 laps from the finish is even more bizarre still. And so, it's crazy that we fans had to wait quite a while for the race to get started again. The fact that it was red flagged for so long was just incredible and just made me feel sleepy. Whoa. Wow. What an amazing dream I just had, folks. I dreamt that I was the winner of the Indianapolis 500. As I was drinking the milk and giving my interview to the NBC sports commentators and thanking my team and whatnot, I decided to shout out, I also like to say, Paul Page, you won this one too! Come on down and drink the milk with me, man! And boy, did that make the crowds cheer alright. But before you could join me, Paul, if you were watching this in the stream that you were about to drink the milk with me, that's when I woke up. But man, what an amazing idea. I'm sure, no doubt, if any driver were to mention you, Paul Page, in victory lane, that would definitely make the crowds erupt and roar in delight, wouldn't it? But enough said, just let me get back to the review of the Indy 500, okay? Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. Now to get on with the final 2 laps of the Indianapolis 500.
Where's Marcus?
Yes, I'm getting to where Marcus Ericsson was. To be honest with you, he was still leading when the race was restarted under yellow with 2 laps to go. Joseph Newgarden was second and Santino Ferrucci was third. They only had 1 lap under yellow for the drivers to warm up the tires. And then when the white flag came out, so did the green flag, and it would be a 1-lap sprint to the finish. And some people have called this controversial indeed, in addition to those 3 red flags that were waved during this race. In addition to the crazy controversy surrounding this year's race, this would be the 3rd race in the Indy 500's entire history to have a last lap lead change, and it all started on the backstretch when Marcus Ericsson at that point was still leading the race. Nashville native Joseph Newgarden of Team Penske managed to get by Marcus Ericsson, last year's Indy winner, to take the lead going into turn 3 and 4, and in the end, the Penske driver took his first Indy 500 win. He is the 3rd driver to win it in 12 attempts. The other 2 were Sam Hanks in 1957 and Tony Kanaan in 2013. Congratulations, Joseph Newgarden, for winning the Indianapolis 500, and 12 attempts is the longest any driver has had from their rookie years to winning it. So congrats to making quite an elite, and he is the first Tennessee native to win the Indy 500 as well. This is Penske's first victory since he purchased the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for himself, and this is the team's 19th Indy 500 win. Marcus Ericsson would finish 2nd. Santino Ferrucci of AJ Foyt Racing miraculously managed to finish 3rd, his best career finish, in fact, at the Indy 500 and in IndyCar racing. No doubt about it. With that said, the Penske is indeed mightier than the sword. And not only that, with Shell replacing Speedway as the official fuel for IndyCars, it was quite capitalizing since Shell was Newgarden's major sponsor, and no doubt this made all the reps of that company come out of their shells in delight.
Not very funny.
Once again, for all of us anti-Penske fans who was hoping for anyone who was not of Team Penske to win and came out disappointed, it was once again a pie in the face for us anti-Penske fans. Despite the fact that none of the rookies finished this year's race, Benjamin Peterson won Rookie of the Year honors for finishing 21st. Joseph Newgarden is in fact the first American in 25 years to win with an engine manufacturer behind him. The previous time was Eddie Cheever in 1998 when he won the Indianapolis 500 with Oldsmobile. There have been 4 other American winners since Eddie Cheever, but they all won with Honda engines behind them. And now it is time for Newgarden to say that he won this not with Honda, but with Chevy. So God bless America. And for all those who say that women and machinery don't mix, you'd be proven wrong, because this year there may not have been a female winner for the Indy 500 yet in the driver's seat. One of Joseph Newgarden's pit crewmen turned out to be a lady, Caitlin Brown, who would be the left front tire changer for Joseph Newgarden throughout this race. So we can say a woman has won the Indy 500 in a special way. So congratulations to Caitlin Brown for helping Joseph Newgarden get to victory. So what goes around comes around with those tires you switch out. And not only that, back in 1929, Coatesville, Pennsylvania native Ray Keech won the Indy 500, and his team owner was a woman too. Her name was Maud Yeagle. It is unfortunate, though, that Ray Keech was killed in a racing crash 17 days after winning the Indy 500, so he didn't have that much pleasure in it. In any case, last year, I had the pleasure of visiting Coatesville for an invitational Grand Prix that was going on, and on top of that, I happened to run into one of Ray Keech's nephews named Ronald McCorkle, and we had a wonderful conversation, and it was quite an honor to meet the descendant of an Indy 500 winner that year. With this race being 2013 Indy 500 winner Tony Kanaan's final race before retiring, he finished 16th on the lead lap. The pole sitter Alex Palou miraculously managed to claw his way back up to 4th after that little pit tangle with Rinus VeeKay earlier in the race. Who knows if without that hiccup Palou could have won? That's one of the many mysteries that we'll never know. But when all is said and done, we say congratulations to Joseph Newgarden for winning the race and becoming the 75th different winner in the Indy 500's history. And so we drink the bottle of cold milk on your behalf. Congratulations, Joseph Newgarden, on making history as well. In addition, since this is another chapter completed in the Indy 500's history, Memorial Day weekend 2024, a new chapter will be written as the 108th running takes place Memorial Day weekend 2024. And a new page will be written, starting with practice. And speaking of pages, and with this day being November 25th, it is most important that we say happy birthday to the voice of the Indianapolis 500, Paul Page! Happy birthday, Paul Page! I hope you like this video review of the Indianapolis 500. Was this an amazing race or what? I'm sure it was. By the same token, we all look forward to making the journey out to the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500 for the 108th running in Memorial Day weekend. And who knows if we will come across each other as we play the waiting game for the green flag to fly for 33 of the fastest drivers at the Brickyard. Once again, I like to say, I hope you like this video, everyone. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share with your family and friends to FormulaPunRacer. I also read all your comments. And once again, I like to say, I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving earlier this week. Happy birthday, Paul Page, and most importantly, congratulations to Joseph Newgarden for being the 75th different winner of the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. See you all next year, Indy 500 fans. I am Aaron Cylinder, firing on all cylinders.
It really mattered after all those restarts. This guy right here grabbed the brass ring and put it on. Oh, that will help the fans. He's going perfect. Joseph Newgarden into the crowd. Look at this. He might never make it back. And now, the whole milk Joseph Newgarden's waited his whole life for. Princesses come in as well. And now the Indy 500 championship ring for Joseph Newgarden.
Christian Milk, let's get a word with him. That's a big ring there, Joseph Newgarden. For years, they've asked you. Oh, his mom, Tina, coming in.